Africa, with over 2,000 languages, this massive continent is also renowned as the cradle of civilization. The continent is oozing with cultural diversity, and that the creative arts are the new gold. The African Union and the Afrochampions initiative are using art with a connection to Africa's heritage, and this is to help transform the modern condition of the continent. Therefore, BOMA of Africa launched a prize program to uncover artistic visions and discover talent with a $50,000 grand prize for investments into the winner's new project.
Africa's future is in its past. How will your Africa look like in 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now? Well, Kevin Karithi from Kenya provides a vivid simulation. Beautification and movement in the time of confinement. Cherie Jackson, Senegal, presents us with this beautiful piece. Do our limitations stir our creative juices so that we produce beauty? What do you see? The codes of yesterday. What binds us from moving forward? Is it the codes of yesterday? Vincent Kolo from Nigeria's art poses this enlightening question. The haunting expression on the subject's face speaks volumes. The foresight of an African youth. Do we have the tools to envision a better future? One that will uplift each and every African, making use of our gifts and talents and dreams. Art by Nuruddin Popola, Nigeria. As we continuously travel to our past to discover our future, will we discover our true selves? Submission by Dawuda Olamelekan Yusuf. Harnessing our differences in a refreshingly intricate collage, Jim Adorno from Ghana illustrates the beauty in diversity and strength in unity. Praise Ojewala, Nigeria, expresses unity despite the difference in ethnicities through the details of his art. Africa's endless magical beauty in 1,000 ways. From the resplendent colors to the authentic African subject in his art, Joseph Mutuku Kenya celebrates unity, culture, beauty, and love. What's your story? Acknowledging and embracing our differences for unity. Alex Niragara from Burundi portrays the richly diverse culture of the Africans in his enthralling patterns, designs, and details. Beautiful unity. Cassandra Tete Ghana uses color, texture, and a whole lot of emotions to paint this masterpiece, displaying different African places. The prize program is helping unearth creative and artistic talent. The partners intend to leverage the talent to enlist corporations and big institutions across Africa into this long neglected and now urgent task of changing the narrative of Africa through creative actions and not just words.
Africa's future is in its past. Indlela ibuza kwa wapambili. That is a Zulu proverb that is translated as, the way forward is to ask those who have gone before.
Nefertiti, my beloved, sweet, sweet, sweet of love, lady of all women, of all grace.
Artists Laureate Program, where top artists are shortlisted through the Creative Arts Prize Program. And of course, through an open call for artists will be announced in July 2020. And these artists will be posted to major corporations and regional institutions to work closely with their marketing and branding departments. The AU and the Afrochampions are aiming at an objective to infuse authentic African artistry into the communications and identities of these prominent African corporate and institutional champions.
Before we started codification, we had some struggles. Some players had some really injuries and changing coaches and everything. But we knew once we figure out, we will play and we'll win.
You always remember that you're representing the whole country.
You know, it's a lot of pressure coming into the tournament, especially being the home team. We want to make sure we give the fans everything they wanted to see.
The first time they announced the league, everyone was like, I want to be a part of this. Everyone was motivated, extra working hard because we wanted to be part of it.
All the guys are just bonding together. It's never any problems. I mean, we may shout at each other, but it's from a good place. Everything's so smooth and natural here.
We did it because
everything we struggled for, now we got the prize. Yeah.
The continent is excited to have something like this take off. There's so many guys in the NBA, African origin, and MVP guys, champion guys. So to bring it here now, we can show some talent on this end.
It's going to put the game to the next level because way back it was like Europe teams on the top, in the States. But now, Africa is going to be on the map. It's always a pleasure to make my dream come true. Because growing up as a kid, I always wanted to play in the African League.
For the younger players coming to youth, they have something to look forward to, especially here. And we have a team playing in the BAL, so now we must get better to prepare so we can have more players coming up now.
The work continues because we want to be in our Final Four at home.
Hi again, everyone, and wherever you're watching from, you're most welcome. Of course, this is we've had a bit of downtime. I hope you've had a moment to stretch and get back to your screen. This is now, we have some time for screening of some two important videos. And the first one, I'll give you a little intro. Afrochampions and the Africa Economic Zones Organization, the African Union Department of Trade, the government of Ghana, Gold Chain, and other entities have formed a consortium to produce a platform for reopening African economies called PANA Bios. This screening will highlight that technology platform.
Our world is industrial. More good is coming out of our interaction with machines than history predicted. We are now able to monitor the abstract, interactions between humans, and migration habits like daily congestion of zones important to our connection. As the COVID-19 shut down economies across the world, factories and labs across Africa have come alive. For many industrial hubs and processing zones across Africa, employees are essential to the revival of the economy. But they have to keep healthy and free from contamination. To help monitor and prevent congestion-related contamination, PANA Bios, the Pan-African Biosurveillance System, keeps track of congested areas and compliance with conditions necessary to keep Africa COVID-19 free. This technology is powered through an app. Institutions download and key in data from those tested to relevant authorities for monitoring and containing any infections.
When that is done, we have our worksheets, so you have to come back and analyze and then determine who is positive and who is not positive. Yes. So once the results have been entered, they can enter the system and go.
How do you also keep data for old, those that have existed, old records?
Okay, so we have an archive. One, the data is electronic, so it's stored.
Yeah.
You think that you need to start from 1.5 to 6.5.
Okay. So that means they are the real numbers of samples that you have sorted.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's enough.
PANA Bios offers a transition from manual processes and record keeping as a smooth digital experience.
So now all I can do at least just entered over here to tell me where the sample was coming from. So if you go to this dashboard, you can know everything about this sample. It's all that we need about the sample. Greater Accra, where it is coming from.
This enables uniformity across Africa, creating a health corridor where people and goods can move freely. Over 9,000 people have died from the coronavirus in Africa. 186,000 patients recovered. In In Ghana, the pilot country for Panabios, COVID-19 related deaths stand at 95 people. Over 11,000 have recovered from the virus. Tracking the range of interactions is the heart of controlling the reach of the pandemic. It has been a hard journey. Hospitals and institutions are faced with a surge in corona cases. They have had to rely on technology to change how they fight against the virus, and accuracy is everything. The system monitors congestion to build a risk model so that if you test positive, the authorities can easily notify the most at-risk individuals, saving your friends and protecting your loved ones.
So we are very critical at this point when we are sorting. We want to be sure that whatever information that we have, if it's a name, is that the same name, or if it's a code, that the same code on the sample. Now it's very, very critical to us. So far, the crash of the work is start from me. Because if you don't sort it, if you mess up over here, then your result is also going to be messed up. And you know, there have been some steps, maybe you're aware of it. It says that over 67% of laboratory errors actually happen in pre-analytical phase.
Beyond local interactions, cross-border travel poses one of the higher dangers of spreading the pandemic.
At the screening point, they will take your temperature. You hand over the health preparation form and the yellow fever vaccination certificate to the officer.
The temperature of it will record the people above the threshold around 38 degrees Celsius. Then you have a after all, then we check the vaccination certificates. That one will have to also correspond with your name, your date of birth, your nationality, and your passport. Then the validity of the vaccination certificate. Then after all, if you have no other health condition, then we'll let you go to immigration.
Many African governments have begun rolling out their economic comebacks, outlining guidelines for reopening of workplaces and learning institutions.
The world is a very small global village, so we depend on each other. So going forward, we've realized that as a country, we have to start easy. So somewhere in the beginning of June, the government took a decision to first do a strategic phase out easy. So we started with a social gathering like the schools, churches, the rest.
Panabios digitizes cross-border travel health clearance to suppress disease importation and transmission.
We have to reopen, and if you want to reopen, we know the whole world is going through easing of sanctions. And we have to get a system in place where we can have real-time data and also real-time oversight over whatever is happening along our borders and also at the airports. And I'm very sure that every country will be doing the same thing, because nobody will like importation of COVID-19 into the country again. First cases we got are our imported cases. We started in China, we went to Europe, we went to North America, and now the epicenter is in South America. And if we are not very careful, we'll just complete easing without any checks. We will get another import into the country, and there will be upsurge of the COVID-19 in the country. And that's what I'm sure every country is doing. And the only way we can do this and do it efficiently and effectively is using technology.
The process is fluid. Panabios is able to monitor and model congestion, and in so doing, track the spread of the disease. Panabios is able to monitor and model the congestion, and in so doing, can map how the disease spreads because of human congestion. Then, we trace and alert people who may be infected and get them tested. As PanaBios is a virtual platform, we then allow people to access their test and vaccination results digitally, giving them certificates to allow cross-border travel.
From what we have seen from PanaBios, it's an innovative way of making sure that at least you have a real-time data, you have a real-time of following people and tracing them, contact tracing them to make sure they are tested if they are supposed to be positive for somebody, have become in contact with somebody. And with that, I think we can sit in our countries and know the people who are coming in and going out, what they are bringing, what they are taking out. And it's a way of also making sure that we get to know the disease better. We get to know the movement of people. This virus is all about mobility. So it moves people go to meet it. So once we open the economy, there will be a lot of mobility within the sub-region and the world. And that's the only way, the surest, fastest way of getting everybody to know where people are. And then we can then do whatever we do and do best.
Finally, it is back to business. Cargo and crew can move goods from industrial hubs to the markets. This is a vital push towards creating seamless trade opportunities, and more countries ratify the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. This project is powered jointly by the African Union and Pan-African institutions like African Economic Zones Organization, Afrochampions, Afrochampions, Cold Chain, and national government initiatives such as the Ghanaian government's Transcorp program.
Never easy to be the final panel in what's been a very full day. So I'm very grateful for those people who've hung on, not just the panelists and our special guests, but also the hundreds of people around Africa and indeed around the world who are joining us on this Sunday evening for some people to hear what is a very important final panel. And that is the panel on entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology. Make no mistake, these are very challenging times for Africa. We're entering into a period of the unknown. But as my late father would say, never waste a good crisis. There are opportunities here to rethink and reposition Africa in a way that we've never seen before in our lifetimes, and we need to seize upon them. Before COVID-19 hit us in the early part of this year, we were all guns a-blazing with regional integration and the AFCFTA, and that hasn't changed. Now more than ever, the African Continental Free Trade Area and regional integration, unity, if you want to go to the center of it, is vital, a vital component as we face this uncertain future. Now, we're going to be talking about three areas that are vital to this resilience and response to COVID-19 to get, as the African Union calls it, the Africa that we want. And those are entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology. And this climax panel of the day has some really great but very diverse panelists. They are Mr. Amadou Gallo Fall, who is the president of the Basketball Africa League and the MD of NBA Africa. Juliet Anama is the chairwoman at Jumia Nigeria, and she's also head institutional affairs at the Jumia Group. Mr. Ahmed J. Benis is the secretary of the African Economic Zone Organization. It's also known by its acronym AIZO. And Mr. Jaswinder Bedi is an industrialist, very busy industrialist, because he also helps the government of Kenya seek international partnerships for development. You are all very welcome on this final penultimate panel. But we'll also be hearing from some special guests in a moment in the course of the conversation, which will be 90 minutes, by the way, not 2 hours. We'll hear from the man at the center of the AFCFTA, working tirelessly to create the AFCFTA, that is His Excellency Ambassador Albert Muchanga, the Commissioner for Trade and Industry at the African Union. We'll also be hearing from the development agency perspective, Ms. Ahuna Eziakonwa. She's the director of the United Nations Development Programme Regional Bureau for Africa. That covers 47 countries, I believe, across sub-Saharan Africa. We'll be hearing about how development agencies, what part they will play in all this. And we'll have a surprise special guest who shall remain our mystery guest until he's announced, but you will be impressed and happy that he's joining us. Now, without much ado, I'm going to run down the list of our four panelists, and I'm going to start by, first of all, I've only given your titles. I've not really explained what you do and where your passions lie. So I'm first of all going to ask you to all kind of introduce yourselves and maybe if you want to speak on this subject, because we know that at the heart of the response to COVID-19 and even before COVID-19 hit our shores, entrepreneurship, innovation and technology, the fourth industrial revolution, engaging our burgeoning youth population across Africa was an essential element to the success of any of our points of progress in Africa. So if you could just talk on the subject of entrepreneurship, innovation and technology, and also first begin by just sort of letting people, the hundreds of people watching, know who you are and what you're passionate about. I'll begin with Amadou Gallo Fall, President of the Basketball Africa League. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to all the organizers of this incredible platform. I enjoyed the earlier panel, and they all tied to my passion. You know, my primary passion is Africa, and as you talked about, how do we build that Africa we all want to see? I think our youth have to be at the center of it all. And I work in an industry, and I've been privileged to really live my passion, because sports speaks the language of the youth. And as you talk about entrepreneurship and how do we build prosperity in Africa, I think there's been a big miss, you know, because we all know who some of the greatest sports talent that we've exported to other leagues around the world are, and their economic power. You know, you talk about whether it's DJ Drogba or Michael Essien, you know, all the great football players, as youth, and what they represented for the continent as ambassadors. The great players in our league, the NBA, we had Luol Deng and Dikembe Mutombo earlier on this panel. Just for me, it's really about, the conversation is about how can we talk about sport as an economic growth engine, you know, where we are not only exporting talent, but how do we create an opportunity right here on the continent to build an industry? I think President Kagame summed it up at our launch of our Basketball Africa League. What our league is going to do is to offer talented young Africans an opportunity to showcase their talent, monetize it, and build industries that go way beyond just what's happening on the court. I was delighted to see earlier my sister Adama Paris on that first panel, and also Vanya, how they started on their journeys, how they started their businesses. What we are looking to do here, and for the benefit of engaging the youth, is we know that what makes the popularity of the NBA as a global brand is the ability to really have sports and fashion and music, all the creative industries intersect seamlessly. And we have an abundance of attributes when it comes to culture. We have incredible places we want to showcase, and our league is going to be fundamentally built on that.
Thank you very much for that opening comments, Amadou. I should mention also one of our special guests is the chairman of a powerhouse of a company that there's a household name across Africa. It's in South Africa. That's Massmart. The chairman of Massmart will be joining us, Mr. Kuseni Dlamini. Very much welcome. We really have representatives from all corners of sectors. We have from the African Union, from the private sector, from sports and entertainment, and from development agencies. So this should be quite an interesting next 90 minutes. I'll turn now to my compatriots, my Nigerian compatriot, Juliet Anama, who's the chairwoman at Jumia Nigeria, a very, very busy emerging company in the digital space. Juliet, are you with us? If you are, quickly tell us what you're doing. And also, I mean, when we're talking about technology and innovation, you're at the forefront right there in Nigeria, aren't you, Juliet? I don't know if you're muted. Is she muted? If so, unmute yourself, Juliet. I see you there. By now, we're all used to these kind of hiccups. So as Juliet finds her mute button, I'll move on to Mr. Ahmed J. Benis. Ahmed is the secretary of the African Economic Zone Organizations, and across Africa, the economic zones are emerging, it seems, almost weekly. And they're an important element to breaking down the barriers between countries and traders, not just for the big boys, not just for the big established mega companies, but also for the small and medium-sized enterprises. So Ahmed, without much ado, please just introduce AEZO or AZO. I don't know if you go by AZO or AEZO, and also just speak to this issue of technology. Ahmed.
Yeah, let me first thank the African Union colleagues and His Excellency, the Ambassador Albert Muchanga, for supporting all these initiatives, and of course the BOMA organization team and the panelists for this outstanding webinar sessions. We are all pleased to celebrate together the commemoration of the Africa Integration Day, and ISO, as one of the stakeholders, is highly involved on this exercise. So African Economic Zones is the representative of the African Economic Zones community. We gather more than 80 members and representing 45 African countries. And back to some history, the special economic zones in Africa were adopted relatively late. And most of the African countries did not execute their program till late 90s. So as of today, there are more than 189 operating economic zones in the continent, and about 57 projects that has been announced. And our responsibility today is to join all this effort and work together with this community to support the development of the industrialization within the continent, and of course the integration within the continent. We should point out the fact that SEZ have given a significant boost to FDI flows and created an attractive investment conditions, of course, to support job creations for the past 5 years. For instance, 60 million jobs have been created in agro-processing, industrial field, services. And more than that, more than $30 billion of turnover has been created for these 5 past years. So that means this is a very important tool that, as you truly mentioned, is not meant only for big investors, for big companies, but entrepreneurs and also small and medium companies had to take a stake on that. And today, for us, is a good opportunity to demonstrate how special economic zones could fit to the needs of entrepreneurs, how technology could be deployed within special economic zones, and of course, how this would lead to cross-border collaboration and cooperation, and of course, the African integration.
Thank you, Ahmed Benis, from the Secretary of the African Economic Zone Organization. Now I'll move on to a fellow who's an industrialist and knows a lot about Pan-African business, He helps the government of Kenya seek international partnership for development amongst his many hats that he wears. That's Mr. Jaswinder Bedi. Jaswinder, tell us a little bit about what you do. You're at the center of a lot of things, and I think you've got this a very unique perspective, because I almost see you as the hawk that flies above a lot of these things, considering that you engage and interact with so many different stakeholder sets. So that would give you a kind of a little bit of a unique perspective, would it not?
Thank you, good afternoon or good morning, wherever you guys are. And thank you for having me on the panel. I'm actually an industrialist in the sense that we do everything from growing cotton. We have our own plantations. We gin that cotton. We do spinning. We do knitting. We do weaving. We do apparel. So basically, we're doing the full value chain from the field to the fashion. Not many people in the world do this type of business. You know, the textile apparel business is actually done in verticals, and it's not horizontally big. And what we've done in Africa is we've decided that we need to change the paradigm. We need to change the narrative. We cannot compete with China on price or with India on price, and maybe need to be competing with them on value. And to give you an example, we're running a brand called Cotton Made in Africa, and this is grown in Uganda and spun in Uganda. We make T-shirts and we export to Europe. And that brand is available in 17 European countries, including Russia. And we have very strong brand ambassadors who are actually running the project with us. And what we're trying to do is just change the narrative. I'll give you further example that 70% of the world's, 70% of Africa's cotton is actually exported in raw form. And Africa grows 7% of the world's cotton. So we grow 1.5 million tons of cotton on the continent, which a lot of it is in West African countries, but we don't add any value. And I give you a small example of what we're trying to do in Uganda. Uganda exports about $50 million of raw cotton. If that turned into a simple T-shirt, that value moves from, the needle moves 15 times. That becomes a $750 million business for Uganda. And for a small country, 750 million in one value chain is a serious amount of value. Now, if you multiply that in 54 African countries, and if you look at that 1.5 million tons that we grow on the continent, out of which 1 million tons is actually exported in raw form, if that is turned again into one simple T-shirt, the multiplying effect is 15 times. We can create 9 million jobs. And what are we all trying to do? Address this fundamental issue, social problem that we all have, which is joblessness. And I think this value chain and industry worldwide, if you look at industrialization, it started from a simple, basic industry of textiles, whether it was the UK in 1900 or Hong Kong in 1960 or Korea, Taiwan, Japan, China, India. They all started with a basic industry when they were industrializing basic textile industry. And I think that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to make sure that we have the raw material, we have the land, we can even grow more cotton if need be. And let's not compete on price, because our cotton is fundamentally different. It's grown by smallholder farmers across the continent. It is conventional cotton, it's not GM cotton. And when you have a serious value, which you need to exploit in a brand, and the entire continent of Africa needs to market that differently and say there is a difference, and that's why we're competing on value. So I think the narrative out there needs to change. We can't be competing on a fundamentally price purely because our product is very different.
And so that calls for us to then have almost a revolution in finding the value in what we do. So essentially understanding very quickly what value our disparate offerings bring. Is that right? Absolutely.
I mean, if you look at other value chains, it's not specific to only cotton. If you look at tea, for example, I'll give you another value chain, because one of my caps that I wear, besides being an entrepreneur in the textile space, we have factories in Kenya and in Uganda, and we're looking at growing into the rest of the continent with new investments, probably in West Africa and Southern Africa. But I chair the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency. Kenya exports about $6 billion of goods internationally. And one of our largest exports is tea. And we export $1.4 billion of tea. And in kilo terms, it's 400 million kilos of tea every year. Now, I was just looking at the value addition. Again, I go back to value addition. Sri Lanka exports 300 million kilos of tea, and their export revenue is $3.5 billion. We export 25% more than Sri Lanka, and our export revenue is 40% of Sri Lanka. It just tells you a serious disconnect that we are not branding our tea. And I went to Sri Lanka, I met the players there, and I asked them, what is so special about Kenyan tea and that you can't do without? And I found out that Kenyan tea has got an aroma and a color, which has to be put into the English breakfast tea. And as you all know, not a single bush grows in the UK. And we have no tea plantation or a tea bush in England, but we all drink English breakfast tea, all of us. And the recipe is simple. It's 1 kilo Assam, 1 kilo Ceylon, and 1 kilo Kenya. And if that can be packaged right and marketed right, surely we can have Kenyan breakfast tea and capture that value. Same thing goes in coffee. I mean, you buy a cup of coffee in New York at Starbucks for $3, but the poor farmer in Kenya gets 3 US cents.
Yes.
And you know, in every value chain, we are so used to just doing basic commodities and raw materials, and we're not capturing the value. And then we're becoming net importers.
And that has to change. If I could now go back to, hopefully the audio is sorted with my dear friend Juliet Anama at Jumia, Nigeria. Juliet, are you with us now? If you are, could you just quickly introduce yourself to the hundreds of people who are listening and listening to you on Facebook as well, and also speak to this issue. Innovation and technology is your game, Juliet. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Mark, thank you very much. And thank you for the forbearance when it comes to technology. Yeah, so my name is Juliet Anama, and I'm the chairwoman of Jumia Nigeria, and also I'm responsible for institutional affairs for the group. And what we do, I mean, when we started 8 years ago as a company, it's really at the heart of entrepreneurship and technology. And this is looking at the fact that we have 1.3 billion Africans, and then we have over, from our own estimate, about 17 million small, medium enterprises. And one of the biggest challenges they have is how do you get access to information? How do you interact? How do you transact with this 1.3 billion consumers? You know, without the barriers of technology, without the barriers of infrastructure, logistics, and so on. And so that's where we saw the opportunity that we could actually create a platform that can bring these two parties together, the merchants, these SMEs who are you know, selling different things. And I'll drink to my earlier colleague who spoke about tea. Definitely there's huge opportunity on the continent on multiple various categories, from fashion to tea to coffee to anything that you can think about. That's where we started, and we see those opportunities. We've also seen we've seen the platform grow. We started with a marketplace of, you know, bringing SMEs onto a marketplace to list their products and then transact directly with consumers. We've also expanded into building a logistics marketplace and then a payments infrastructure also to enable those transactions to happen. And then during COVID, we also realized that there were a lot of informal SMEs who were completely cut off because they didn't have access to technology, and therefore when there was restrictions on movement and restrictions on trade, you know, just lockdowns, they really suffered. And we've started now to also say, look, how do we bring more and more of even SMEs that are typically classified as being in the informal sector to come onto e-commerce, and therefore give them an opportunity that next time anything such a thing happens, they are more resilient, they're able to respond faster and be able to maintain their livelihoods. So that's I'm very passionate about that, and that's really our passion. It's really about growing the SME base on the continent and making sure that they can transact with consumers, and growing and letting people know that there are many things we have on the continent. There's so many things I see on Jumia platform that I'm surprised, because people will say, look, I thought I could only buy it on Amazon, but it's available in Africa, and we're only operating in Africa. Currently, we're in about 11 countries at the moment on the continent. So I'm really excited about this panel. Yeah.
And how much of the products that you see, are you seeing a change in the types of products that you're seeing on the platform in terms of locally produced? I'm talking about made in Africa, in your case, made in Nigeria. Or are you seeing, because you can read from month to month, year, but from the inventory, you can see changes happening before anyone else does, because you're seeing the flow of goods and the payments as well. So you've got a lot of information at your fingertips that others wouldn't have. And that gives you a unique perspective. What are you seeing that you can share with us?
We're seeing a lot of interest, especially when it comes to fashion, right? When it comes to fashion, when it comes to some basic staples, grocery items, that people are really hungry to find something that is authentic.
Oh, she's frozen. Maybe she'll come back. Give her a few seconds to see. Sometimes there's a blip and she returns.
Of course, we cannot we cannot pretend that we're still not a largely import dependent continent. But then, to your point, we're seeing that shift happening. We're also seeing that to the extent that people have items that are locally manufactured and they are packaged properly, that consumers have an interest in them. Consumers see those items not just from the consumer value of the utility value of those items, but also the pride that these things are manufactured and made on the continent. Yes.
Okay, Juliet, I want to come back to you in a moment, but I think it's a good segue to go from, you're talking about this virtual marketplace. One of the most powerful companies in Africa is Massmart. Many of you will know the company, and it's doing great things. And it's also a futuristic, future-looking company. It's not standing still. It understands the changing times, and it understands the realities of the circumstance that its customers and clients face. I believe with us, if I'm not mistaken, is Mr. Kuseni Dlamini, one of the hardest working businessmen in Africa. Are you there, Kuseni? And if so, maybe I could bring you in as our first special guest just to make some comments. We're talking, Kuseni, about the industrialization of Africa, entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology, in particular, within these very curious times we find ourselves in. Are you there, Kuseni?
Yes, I am, Mark. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay,
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Just tell us a little bit from your vantage point, because your company is probably one of the top 5 largest companies in Africa, if I'm not mistaken. So that is a very unique perspective. Tell us what you're seeing and thinking from your side.
From our side, we're seeing the current environment, which is marked by the challenges imposed by COVID, as a great opportunity for Africa. Like you said earlier on, Mark, so well, you put it so eloquently, that we need a revolution in finding value in what we have in Africa. And I think Africa has got immense assets that have not been leveraged to the maximum. What we have done as a business, as Massmart, we believe that our supply chain has got to be diverse and it's got to be inclusive in the markets where we operate. We want to make sure that we bring in local suppliers, to the point that Juliet made earlier on, that most of what is sold in the continent is largely imported. We deliberately have embarked on a strategy to substitute imports. And we've partnered with manufacturers, with entrepreneurs, with innovators, which relates to the theme of today, to assist them to be able to produce products that we can therefore then give them an offtake. And it's not just ending there. All our suppliers in Africa that we work with, we want to walk the journey with them to globalize, to help them to globalize their footprints, because we are one of the fortunate retailers on the African continent, in the sense that our controlling shareholder, majority shareholder that is Walmart. So we are part of the Walmart organization. So it's Massmart powered by Walmart. So any supplier that supplies us in Africa meets the standards that are required by the Walmart organization. And it therefore follows that if they can supply us here, and they can also supply in the rest of the Walmart organization globally. And we've had some great successes with grassroots entrepreneurs owned by young people, owned by women that have managed to take advantage of these opportunities and are starting to export, and indeed have started to export their products. I think we need a paradigm shift and a reset of our mindset around African entrepreneurship, small and medium enterprises. We need to look at countries like Germany, like Austria and Switzerland, where you've got small and medium enterprises that are globally competitive and they're plugged in the global supply chains and value chains of Fortune 100 companies, of FTSE 100 companies, of global multinationals. And I think this is the opportunity that Africa has now with the disruption and the reset in global supply chains caused by COVID-19. We need industrial policies and strategies that are going to build world-class manufacturing and production capacities for African businesses to manufacture products, not just for the 1.2 billion Africans, but for 7.7 billion people, citizens in the world. We have got to raise the scale of our ambition as Africans, raise the scale of the ambitions of our small and medium enterprises. They should not just think in terms of the local market. Yes, it's good to start locally, succeed locally, build up regionally, but also there's a bigger global market out there to be captured. And that's what we should target. And I'm very confident that the African Continental Free Trade Area is really setting the right foundation and creating the right ecosystem and an environment to enable African entrepreneurs and innovators and technology players to think and act globally and capture global value chains.
Just quickly, before when we started this session, there was a great video talking about how there's been something of an explosion of often young African innovators who've responded to not just the shortage of PPE, masks and things like that, but also the gaps created by the disruption of global supply chains to a continent that is import heavy, an import-driven economy. I'm thinking of China for one. Now, if you go around one of your supermarkets, of course, you will see a vast majority of imported goods. What's your thinking in terms of seizing this moment in time to nurture those saplings, those embryonic, small, young people with big ideas that are emerging sometimes despite government? And responding to the COVID needs that have been brought by COVID-19. What part do you think, not just yourself sitting on the pinnacle of a multi-billion-dollar African company, but all of us have to play in ensuring that they just don't disappear, that they're supported, and from all these innovators come the next mass marts, so to speak?
Oh, that's a great question, Mark. Amadou said earlier on in the context of sports, that sports is the language of the youth. I am finding increasingly that entrepreneurship and innovation in Africa is the language of young Africans. They don't want charity. They don't want handouts. They want partnerships. They want to be plugged into value chains, into supply chains. They want to be assisted to develop products that are world-class. And to your point, to the question that you raised, I think this is a golden opportunity for young African entrepreneurs to step up to the plate. And I'll urge business leaders of big companies to create the environment where African entrepreneurs are actually encouraged and supported and embraced and given the opportunities, because all they need is opportunity. They don't need charity, they don't need handouts. They realize that they've got to be globally competitive. Whether you go to Nairobi, or you go to Accra, or you go to Lagos, or you go to Kampala, or you go to Kigali, the generation of African young people that you see today, they've got a global perspective and they see the opportunities that are there. But what is lacking across the continent is the right ecosystem to be able to really unearth our own Mark Zuckerbergs, our own Elon Musk. Elon Musk, by the way, was born in South Africa, not far from where I am. I'm in Johannesburg. He comes from Pretoria.
So you're claiming him.
If he stayed in South Africa, I doubt if he would have achieved the measure of success that he has. There are many Mark Zuckerbergs in Accra, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Dakar, across Nigeria, across Africa. But what is lurking, the difference between Africa and the USA and Silicon Valley, there is an ecosystem that enables people to try and fail, and and through failing and trying and failing, they eventually succeed. But we need to create that, and we need to use this COVID environment as part of the recovery process, as part of getting the African Continental Free Trade Area into full steam, to really try and create that right ecosystem that is going to harness and unlock the full potential of African innovators, technology entrepreneurs, and who are keen to play in the fourth industrial revolution, and also keen to be part of global supply chains.
Thank you, Kuseni Dlamini, for that. I'm going to pick up on something you said. You mentioned Amadou Gal and sports, and I just want you to demystify, Amadou Gal, what you said about the sports industry becoming this catalyst for unemployment on the African continent. How can you elaborate on that? How can something like the Basketball Africa League become an economic growth engine? How does that work?
Thank you, Mark. So if you look at the NBA, we have 30 franchises that are all from different cities, and each of these franchises, the basketball teams, are economic dynamos for their communities. They employ thousands of people. It's not just, yes, we have some of the greatest athletes on earth playing on the court, but on a game day in an arena that is, and you notice that most of the NBA arenas for a certain time now have moved back to the areas of the cities that were basically, left to disintegrate, especially after the riots in the late 60s. A lot of these downtown areas were burned and people moved to suburbs. So these arenas, these infrastructures were used to kind of re-energize, rejuvenate downtown DC. I went to school in Washington, lived there for 9 years. I know the area where the current arena for the Washington Wizards is. That's the area that nobody went to. Now, I mean, it's vibrant with all kinds of businesses, built around there. When I see what's starting to happen in Africa also, you start to see this infrastructure being built. We've spent a lot of time engaging with different stakeholders about exactly how sports could be an economic development engine. We focus at micro level first when we opened our office in 2010, to focus at grassroots level, just to make sure the game was relevant. We get as many young boys and girls as possible to participate in playing the sport. And then we see talent is emerging. These talent, unfortunately, have to go somewhere else, whether it's in US colleges or, the few number of them who make it to the NBA, they all have to go to US universities. Luke Mamute, the first young player from Cameroon, who was in our 2003 first basketball Borders camp, went to UCLA, graduated, and then got into the NBA. And the story is the same with others. What we want to do is bring that model here. We are committed to growing our sport here. The way we grow the NBA business was to focus at grassroots level, growing interest. Now there's an opportunity to do the same thing. And we see, for example, magnificent infrastructures like Dakar Arena, where we were supposed to launch our Basketball Africa League in March, last March, before the COVID pandemic forced us to pause and decide to postpone. Kigali Arena, the same thing. We had engagement with His Excellency, the President Paul Kagame, who's been a big champion who understands that with the youth agenda that every African country has, that sports could be an avenue, and they build an incredible arena where we intend to also, take our league. Think about this arena on game day, all the other businesses that are going to be activated, from security to catering, because people coming to the arena, they're going to, need to be entertained. Transportations, you are encouraging tourism, and for us with the league, we want to encourage intra-Africa, trade. And I think this league is going to be a perfect example to why you want to ease these border restrictions, because we have 12 teams from 12 different countries. And the way we're going to play this league, the way we are going to launch it, organizing weekend tournaments where you bring multiple teams from multiple countries in one African city. And you organize all kinds of ancillary activities around showcasing what Africa has best to offer in the areas of fashion and music and art and technology. So this is really where we think what Adamo Paris was talking about earlier, we're going to have a platform for somebody like her to really showcase her talent. We're engaging with the Afrexim Bank. I was glad to see Dr. Arama on the platform earlier. So I think by creating this enabling environment where all types of partnerships are going to be able to flourish, using the convening power of sport and basketball in particular in this specific area. It's not just the 12 or 24 players who will be playing that day, but also the broadcasters, you know, the people who are going to provide the entertainment in the arena, the people who are marketeers, because you got to sell this product, you got to package it and market it to fans. You want to drive them to the arena. You're going to broadcast, you know, this league to a global audience. It's just like the NBA. Our biggest revenue generators come from the content we create, you know, that we license to broadcasters. We have major broadcasters in Africa that are starting to, you know, to pop up. Obviously, most of them come from, you know, other countries, but as we get going, that industry is going to be, you know, definitely, you know, revived.
You haven't mentioned merchandise as well. We're talking about manufacturing. We saw those people sewing masks and so on. If you think about like I was watching the Chicago Bulls documentary on Netflix a few weeks ago, and about how it exploded, how Nike did a deal with Michael Jordan, and then all the kids are wearing basketball. You see them wearing basketball clothing, and it was even exporting American superpower, the American brand around the world. It proliferated around the world, and it's there to stay. So it's actually a very powerful tool when it comes to manufacturing as well, sport, isn't it?
Absolutely, and merchandising is another area, you know, of manifestation of really the strength of our brand. What we do, we have a vast digital footprint. As the NBA has, you know, I think the number one in terms of, you know, just driving the social conversations, whether it's through Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. So we use this digital footprint and also the powerful voices of our athletes who are global icons, you know, to really set trends. And that's the same thing that's happening in Africa. We know that a lot of these biggest music stars, we've hosted them in our events in the US, whether it's, you know, whether it's Davido or, you know, Wizkid and all these global superstars, and including those in other sports. That's the environment that we are going to create on the continent. We've developed an incredible logo that I know already we're starting to talk to different licensees who are interested in working with us to develop that merchandising line. So that is, for me, the relevance of creating this whole value chain for cotton resonates with us, and that's why I see the Basketball Africa League as an African brand that is authentically designed and created to showcase African talent. And when I say talent, I'm not just talking about basketball talent on the court, but designers, you know, artists, and people who have an interest in a vast area of activities that are all going to contribute to, you know, really have Africa. When you talk about the Africa we want to see, it's about empowering our youth. And again, they naturally gravitate towards sport, and basketball is the #2 sport in the world, and we have an incredible amount of talent that we're going to make sure that we retain some of this talent right here on the continent, and to leverage really all the great things that the continent has to offer.
Now, the Greeks have a god called Atlas. You might have seen him. He's carrying the world on his shoulders. But that was actually statistically impossible for him to do that, simply because he had nowhere to stand. You need a platform and you need a space. It can be virtual. We're talking about innovation and technology, but often you need to bring people into the same space, industries to cross-pollinate and to learn and work with each other. Economic zones are an important part of the puzzle for the intra-Africa future that we're looking at, this bold future of the AFCFTA and inter-regional trade. I want to ask Ahmed J. Bennis a question. In fact, it's a two-pronged question, Ahmed. The first part is, how do these economic zones, in light of what we're seeing with COVID-19 and this uncertain future, how do these economic zones help restore economic activity in the wake of COVID-19? And secondly, how can they help proliferate technologies and best practices, actually, not just technologies, but best practices? And I'm talking not only within countries, I'm talking also how across borders as we reach for regional integration. Ahmed.
Well, we all know that it's not only dedicated to African economic zones, but it's the whole continent that we're suffering from the COVID-19 crisis. But within the economic zones context, it's really an uncertain period since it's disrupt the activities and hinder the operation due to the lockdown restrictions. So the most economic zones in Africa are reliant on manufacturing and export-led activities. And in this context, the African Economic Zones leader have deployed special measures to recover from this outbreak. So a business continuity plan has been set and has been implemented in order to support the industrial operations, getting product to market and granting access to raw materials. And this business continuity plan consists on a series of measures and safety and security measures to, of course, preserve the safety of the employees while meeting the demand of the operators and the industrialists. And it was a big dilemma and it was a big deal. But the global pandemic has put the diversification on the global value chain as a center stage, involving the economic zones as a major stakeholders and in order to implement new innovative policies. So this new wave of the global supply chain could provide new opportunities today into expanding into new fields of activities and lead to new stimulus to attract new investments and improve the market demand. And what we mean by the market demand is the African market demand. So a global, it's at the continental level. And then the African economic zones, through all the prerequisites, this could drive the export diversification and promote a regional integration and stimulates the industrial spillover effect and clustering. And this is actually what we are doing. The economic, sorry?
Go ahead.
Yeah. It's also the expression for the implementation of the new industrial policy involving technology, involving innovation, with the objective to rebalance import and export activity towards growth based on serving the domestic market and the regional demand. So I have said that yesterday in one of the panels. So within this critical time, all of us that works on the continent, live in the continent and care about the continent, we have the responsibility to look forward and seize the opportunity of the African Free Trade Area to simply seize this opportunity that the economic zones could provide in order to spread the move to restore the economic activity and drive the implementation of value-added projects and implement sustainable strategy in the wake of the COVID-19. On the other hand, special economic zones has to follow the new trends in the global economy and the market conditions, because it's rapidly changing. And in order to succeed in this environment, the economic zones must undertake continuous technological and industrial learning and innovation will be one of the main drivers. And this is with the objective to enhance the productivity, not only at the economic zones level, but at the country level, and sometimes at the regional level, and sustain the competitiveness, because this is what we need for our African industry and for the African economy, is to bring more competitiveness to our product, and of course to fit to the needs to our markets and to the export to the export market. So it's important for us as economic zones community to catalyze and facilitate the industrial upgrading by promoting technology and the innovation transfer. And this can go towards several efforts that could include implementation of R&D services. We can, let's say, enhance and reinforce the linkage between the university and the industry, which is missing today. We should support the business incubators initiatives, which is also one of the gaps that has been identified so far. And the private sector has to be highly involved and to define the policies, investing in capacity building and expertise sharing goes by attracting talent, African talent, the one that lives in the continent and the one that lives abroad. So it's our responsibility as well to offer the best environment for those talent to evolve within those conditions. And as you know, the cost of doing business today increase, and the economic zones need to be more innovative, to move up in the value chain. And it's our responsibility, because we are the one who are gonna bring the FDI, who are the one who are gonna convince the investors to come and settle with and offer the right condition for this settlement. So in Africa, and this is what we have seen so far. So most economies started with relatively low tech and labor intensive sectors. So, and this is a fact, this is reality. But gradually, we should move to more knowledge-intensive service sectors, to more, let's say, technology incentive activity. But this is not an easy process, by the way. It's not easy. So making this successful transition, of course, requires skillful leveraging in both business, involving business and market forces, and also the governmental support. So the proliferation of technology and best practices have then a critical development dimensions. The first one is the technological development is so important for building the productive capacity. Second, the large technology and innovation gaps that has been identified and that exists already in the developing country. In Africa, we are a bit far from these technology frontiers, and so we should bring it to us. And of course, the economic catch-up requires the narrowing of this gap through the accumulation of knowledge and innovation capacity building, and moving closer to the technology frontiers. So from the economic zones side, it should be used to bring transformational change as part of an integrated industrial strategy. So quality FDI helps create economy-wide job, better skills, industrial upgrading, and productive local private sectors. But from the investor side, who most of them are increasingly looking for a wide range of productivity incentives in terms of skilled workforce, but efficient logistic and supportive infrastructure. And this is rather than a fiscal benefit. So they are also keen to set up powerful partnership with the local institutions, with the local actors, university, the governments, administration and authority, to create more competitive and export-oriented cluster.
So if I could bring in Jazz Bedi here. Few people understand industrialization in Africa quite like you do, Jazz, with your experience. I think one of the things that I'm getting from Ahmed is that you can't sort of work in a silo. that, I mean, by the very nature of an economic zone, it's a partnership space, one that brings in a lot of actors, and then you find the common, the mutual ground and work together towards an objective. What kind of partnerships do you see in this current climate that are critical? What kind of partnerships are critical for industrializing Africa in this post-COVID reality?
Well, one thing is for sure, Mark, is that COVID has brought a new realization, and I'm actually thinking that maybe globalization has peaked. What Africa saw in the last couple of weeks and months with COVID was that, guys, we're on our own. Nobody's going to stand up for us. We need to do our own production. We need to keep our factories busy, and we need to protect our people and our frontline workers and our medics. And that was a classical example for PPE. Not much of PPE was being made in Africa. A lot of it was being imported from Europe, from India, from China. And all of them said, sorry, guys, we can't export at the moment. We've banned exports of PPE. So in simple words, they told us, you're on your own. And we could have done 25 years business with you, but thank you very much. At this particular time, our own people mean more to us. So what does that tell you? It tells you that, guys, yes, we're on our own. And yes, we need to change the way we've been doing business. Yes, we need to change the modus operandi. We need to look for in-country local solutions. And that's the challenge that I was given by my president when he said, we need to see an in-country local solution. So I transformed my entire company, and in fact, both companies in Uganda and in Kenya, both the factories tooled, repurposed the entire facility and started producing PPE. We had laid off people. I mean, I've said that before, and I'm not, and I'll say it again tonight, is that maybe I was the first victim of COVID. By that, I mean, in Africa, I mean, it's my business, not myself, because I was hit in February this year from the supply side. I used to import my raw materials from China, manufacture in Kenya, and export to the US. So in February, we were hit by the supply side constraints. In March, my customers shut shop in Europe and US. So then I was hit in the demand side constraints. I had 800 people in the factory. 400 people had to go back on leave and paid leave. And I said to the guys, what can we do? And maybe we'll start shop in March. But when March, demand side also dried up, and it was 2.5 months of hell. I've just come out of a roller coaster ride, repurposed, retooled the entire factory. And right now, not only did we re-employ those 400 people that went home, we actually have another 300 that came on board. So we're now running with increased labor force, both in Uganda and in Kenya, only because we decided that we need to repurpose and retool, and we need to survive. So in my life today, everything I'm doing is reinvent, reintroduce, re-engineer, reimagine. Everything to do with re is the buzzword.
Yes, re is the word, isn't it?
And I've been writing anything re, and I've got more than 20 re's that I've come up with. And every day I pick up a new re.
But you still sound optimistic, and I want to stay on this this concept of partnerships, because it's like musical chairs. We're all trying to find our space and our purpose in this unexpected reality that we find ourselves in with COVID-19. I'm a big believer in partnerships, and in fact, I've devoted the second half of my career to partnerships, because I believe that Africa's power and progress exists in partnerships and collaborations, and I'm an enemy of silos. I believe that where two forces come together, where two ideas and individuals come together in Africa, magic happens. A big important partner in all this is the likes of the United Nations, and in particular the UNDP. This is a development agency, not an aid agency or a humanitarian agency, but a development agency. And I want to bring in now the director of the United Nations Development Program's Regional Bureau for Africa. This is a bureau, the big bureau in UNDP, that covers about 47 countries, if I'm not mistaken, with about 45 country offices in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, Ahuna Eziakonwa, are you there? Ahuna Eziakonwa?
I'm here, Mark, yes.
Very nice to have you on board. Now, as a development agency, what is your role in all this, fostering entrepreneurship and innovation? This is at the center of much of the work that you do. I know that for a fact that the United Nations Development Program is going through in itself, even before COVID-19, was going through a metamorphosis. You're calling it the next generation UNDP. With that in line, what can we expect from development partners like yourselves going forward? What part of the solution are you?
Thank you, Mark, and greetings to the panelists and everyone. Let me start by maybe commending Afrochampions and the Boma team for this incredible platform. I was able to listen to the earlier sessions, and really kudos to you for providing this platform to hear Africa voices and tell Africa stories, by Africans. That's really incredibly important, and the reason why we're meeting on a Sunday. Sorry, I'm not in my Sunday best. It's a holiday in the US, holiday weekend, and I'm determined to take advantage of this holiday. But this is an important enough subject to devote some time to it. Let's not make any mistake. Poverty on the continent of Africa is deep and it is widespread. And I'm not one who likes to dwell on the topic of poverty itself. I like to focus more on the promise that the continent presents. But COVID-19, I think, has reminded us how far we are from getting to where we ought to be on the continent, and how even farther we are now with all the deep impact that this has had. And, someone brilliant came up with the idea of a VUCA world, a world that is more vulnerable, more uncertain, more complex, and filled with ambiguity. And this is the landscape, Mark, the development landscape that we face today. It's one with huge unpredictability. And that has actually shocked us as a development agency into changing the way we are. And I want to just name a few areas that we have learned over the last 5 decades that we've been in development practice, where things have to be done differently and where we're trying to push for a different agenda. The first is the concept of sustainability, that we have to have a shock-proof development model that anticipates the likes of COVID-19 and have us futures thinking. So back to that agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals, which we must bring back to the conversation. It's about people, it's about planet, it's about prosperity. And we really can't but have all three together. So concept of building resilience, that's what we're working on. How do we help countries build their resilience to shocks, such as the one that we've seen that basically can wipe everything out, including the industrialists and the entrepreneurs overnight. The second area is fighting inequality. What has happened in the health sector, it's been a big lesson that we can have some parts of our communities with zero services and others having everything. We need a world that is much more equal between men and women, between young and old, between urban and rural, and so on and so forth. So our development practice, development models have to fire up mechanisms that promote more equal access to the resources that are there. The third is innovation and digital technologies, which is the topic of this conversation here. And with that, for us, comes two things: scale and speed. Now, if you think that the world, the way development practice is going on the continent is so slow, and also we have a lot of decelerating factors, including climate change, then we need accelerators. And what we're doing as UNDP here, last year, the UNDP administrator launched what has become the largest and fastest learning network that we call the Accelerator Labs, 60 of them, half of them in Africa. And their intention there is to unlock local knowledge for development solutions. So the labs are sensing, they're exploring, and they're testing solutions. And I think this is a new way that we have found to deal with wicked development challenges that we're finding on the continent, we can no longer just import ideas and dump them on the continent. Yeah. We need to understand that the talent is there, the knowledge is there on the ground. You have homegrown solutions that need to be listened to and then amplified to bring that solution to the problem. And we are seeing that evidence that this is the right approach. The fourth is moving from funding to financing. It's clear that funding locks you into a vicious circle. Funding is critical in many ways, but if you just continue to use funding as your framework for development practice, then you are locked in a vicious circle of dependency. So financing, UNDP is going into the area of financing, looking at impact financing, looking at innovative financing, looking at bonds and all of that, and green financing. And that, I think, liberates the continent's resources as well. You would know that we are launching a campaign on Africa's Money for African Development. And this is crucial to, and the earlier panel spoke about this. This is not a poor continent. It's really endowed financially, but also in terms of human capital. And this now needs to be tapped into to create that confidence that the continent needs to own its own development agenda. The fifth area is our brother Albert Muchanga's cup of tea here, which is regional integration. I don't think personally that Africa can achieve its development goals without integrating. And here I don't just mean economic integration. It has to be political integration as well as economic, social, and physical integration when it comes to the infrastructure and telecommunications needed to connect Africa's people and African businesses. And this is where I think a lot of entrepreneurs and young innovators can also benefit immensely. The sixth is reconsidering dependency. And here I don't want to dwell on it, but development practice can often look like it is creating dependency. And you know, everything that all the panelists have spoken about in terms of, you know, if you just take the example of local domestic production that was laid bare by this COVID-19, that we need to reconsider dependency in our development practice. We need to ensure that you're not only talking about commodity dependence, but also cultural dependence. And that's where the storytelling, the creatives come in. And that's why it's very important to acknowledge Afreximbank and others who are investing in the creatives, because that's where the authentic voice of Africa lies, and where we can bring in that freedom from the mental colonization that exists. And lastly is the centrality of states. And this is where we unleash UNDP's governance footprint. That states remain important in the way we deal with this VUCA world. You cannot bypass the state, but the state has to be capable, compassionate, competent, and confident. The African state must have these 4 C's to be able to deliver the kind of enabling environment that Africa's entrepreneurs need to survive. And that's where UNDP also comes in the way we do governance to precisely accompany countries to achieve this kind of state that is capable. Back to you.
Thank you, Director of UNDP Regional Bureau for Africa, Ahuna there. You're talking about a lot of innovative areas, but you're also talking about partnerships. And you mentioned my dear brother, Ambassador Albert Muchanga. I described him very early on in the intro as being the man at the center of the AFCFTA, and he certainly is. Commissioner, if we can hear you, as the Commissioner of Trade and Industry, please talk some about the AFCFTA and where we're at. Give us sort of an update with regards to it, but also you're also together with Afrochampions, who are instrumental in putting the Boma Festival together. You're launching some major multi-stakeholder initiatives and public-private partnerships. And they are to connect a diverse group of interests with a view to removing barriers to integration. So what are you launching, Ambassador? Tell us about them.
Thank you very much. I'll begin by saying that I'm really impressed with the insights that are emerging from this discussion. Very spirited, very passionate, and full of love for Africa. And that is very, very encouraging. And of course, the videos started it all. They brought out what is possible. Certainly from nowhere, you come up with instruments that can change the face of a continent. Where are we on the African continental free trade area? We were supposed to launch the market for start of trading on the 1st of July this year, but the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the plans. So after consulting, member states proposed that we launch on the 1st of January 2021. And the preparations were also disrupted. So beginning 14th of this month, we're going to embark on the virtual preparations to finalize work on the 3 areas. This is on rules of origin. This is on the coming up with the schedule of concessions on trading goods, and also coming up with a schedule of specific commitments on trade in services. And we are very, very hopeful that we'll be able to finalize work on these issues by 5th December this year, when we are going to have a special summit to get our final progress report and assure the heads of state and government that we are ready for the launch of the market. And with or without a vaccine, we are going to have the summit. If it has to be a virtual summit, it's going to be a virtual summit. With or without a vaccine to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, we are going to launch on 1st of January 2021. We cannot delay any longer. And of course, we have not done this on our own. We have developed a wide range of partnerships. It's very, very difficult to go through the full list of partners. But when related to what has been discussed here, a number of partnerships emerge. One of them is the partnership with the African Export-Import Bank to come up with the Intra-African Trade Fair editions. This is very important because the activities that came out during this discussion, I saw that it is very, very important that the producers of these products really expose them to a wide market across Africa by participating in the Intra-African Trade Fair editions. We are supposed to have one in September this year in Rwanda, Kigali. And again, because of the pandemic, it has been shifted to September 2021. So I'd encourage the SME operators here to register and participate. The other partnership, which is very vital to SME development, is that we have teamed up with a member of the African diaspora to come up with a youth startup pavilion for the Intra-African Trade Fair. And we have been able to mobilize funding to cater for 150 youths to go and exhibit their startup operations at the trade fair on a very competitive basis. We are going to open the competition on 7th this month, 2 days from now, when we end the Africa Integration Day commemorations. And it will run for some time. And all the startup operators are really encouraged to compete. And we're not just going to mobilize the startup operators. We are also working with the venture capital firms so that they can also be at the trade fair and link up with the startup operators as a basis for them to really grow their businesses. And of course, the Afrochampions has been a strategic partner in a number of ways. We are working together on the Panabios and the ADA projects, among others, including the $1 trillion framework. So they're another strategic partner. But I also like to bring one issue on the issue of partnerships. And this is a message I've been giving to the African private sector and member states and academia. If we have really to develop innovation in Africa, first and foremost, skills development is very vital. Then secondly, we need to invest in research and development. And the third, we need to invest in design institutes across Africa. When we have done that, we are able to really capture value, as has been stressed during this discussion, that we should compete on value. We are able to compete on that because, one, we've got a very differentiated product, which is made in Africa. And it is designed to be very attractive so that we brand the product as made in Africa. Now, to achieve that, and this is my message, there's need for the governments across Africa. There's need for the private sector across Africa. And there's also need for academia across Africa to collaborate more effectively across these areas. Let us collaborate in investing in skills, industrial skills development, so that we have across the continent manufacturing and agro-processing institutes. Let us collaborate in the development of design institutes across Africa. Let us collaborate in investing in research and development. Without that collaboration, we will not reach the scale that is required for us to compete quite effectively. So like I indicated, I can go on and on that there are quite a number of range of partnerships, and UNDP, we're exploring a partnership which is going to really focusing on accelerating development across Africa. And we've agreed that when that is finalized, that program is going to be in the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area in Ghana, Accra. So we have quite a wide range of collaborating networks. And without that, I think it would be difficult to achieve much. All these discussions that have been going on since the 1st January, since the 1st July, as we go up to 7th of July, when we are going to have the final commemoration of Africa Integration Day, they have been made possible through collaboration. And of course, you're also a collaborator in the African Business Forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Commissioner of Trade for the African Union. Yes, when you mentioned Panabios, this initiative that will jolt Africa to open its borders and trade, we should mention that AEZO is a partner in that. And for EDA, this African fashion house that brings fashion designers and cotton growers and fabric manufacturers together to make things like masks that are branded by top partners. You have two of your partners are on this call, Massmart and the Basketball Africa League. Speaking of that, the Basketball Africa League, if you will indulge me, and if the technical guys are standing by with fingers on buttons, if I could ask you to roll, I have one video to roll. It's only about 2 minutes long, but this video is great because it gives you an indication of regional integration and partnerships all rolled into one with a sports flair. So without much ado, if you could roll the BAL logo reveal video, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will unveil something special.
We are thrilled to be here in Kigali Arena, the future home of the inaugural Basketball Africa League finals.
Africa is a continent where talent emerges every day. And NBA and FIBA are working together to make a worldwide reference league.
With this truly Pan-African footprint, the Basketball Africa League will celebrate Africa's diversity, its vibrant youth with a sport that is #2 in the world, where we have the best talent in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Basketball African League logo.
Basketball Africa League, it's like Africa as we know it. I want to compare it with the fact that Africa produces minerals of very high value, gemstones, all produced here, exported in their raw form, processed outside, added value, and then brought back to Africa. But this one, what it is, this Basketball Africa League, what it produces is a process where value is added to African talent. And I want to thank all those that have made it possible. And we are here to be with you, to play with you, to support you, and all the best to you. Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it. I think it would be remiss of me not to quickly go to Amadou Gallo Fall. I mentioned that you are one of the partners in the EDA project, but that project also is a great example of regional integration. 12 teams from 12 different companies, right, Amadou?
Absolutely. And you talk about partnership. I think, and also the whole African integration, this is a concrete example. You know, we are starting with 12 teams, but I have no doubt in years to come that it is going to grow. And also the key was to form a partnership with FIBA Africa. FIBA is the world governing body for basketball, the NBA being the premier, the eminent basketball, professional basketball league in the world. Partnering with FIBA to start this in Africa is something historic, something that we're looking forward to building on. And what we've done really is to use the convening power of basketball. And again, as I mentioned earlier, our players are global icons. Our African players are global icons. You heard of Pascal Siakam or just Joel Embiid in Philadelphia, for example. These are young people who came from our grassroots initiatives right here in Africa. Basketball is our borders that we've been running since 2003. So we're building from grassroots to now this aspirational league because there is tremendous momentum for Africa in the NBA. Masai Ujiri, as we all know, won the NBA championship last year. He built that team, from really soups to nuts, from the athletes on the court and also talent off the court, with this incredible amount of talent that has originated right here in the continent. That's what President Kagame is referring to. Now we are here committed to building on the continent with partners. And when we talk about partners, in fact, in the NBA, we very seldom use the word sponsorship. We talk about partnerships. Our biggest partners are the likes of Disney or Nike that you mentioned earlier. And also some global NGOs, you talk about the UNDP. We met with Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, the Deputy UN Secretary General, about talking about all the sustainable development goals that I feel like throughout our journey here, building NBA Africa, we've been ticking those boxes, even without being conscious of it. So I think there's a unique opportunity here to engage the youth and also to use the convening power of sport to bring all these potential partners together to grow a merchandising industry, to grow content business, to continue to also, when you're talking about education, you know, training people who are going to be incredible marketers of our sport. That's what the Basketball Africa League is going to showcase. And also attracting people from the fashion world, from the music industry, and all various parts of technology. Kuseni, it's great to see him here because we've had many conversations about working with mass marts because they're major distributors of some of our partners, you know, in the sports equipment world.
And is Kuseni still on the line? I know he was expected to make one intervention. Are you still there, Kuseni? If you are. Oh, yes, I think I see his microphone go off and on. If Kuseni is still with us, if
yes,
you could come back.
Yes, I am indeed.
Hey,
indeed,
you're back again. Fantastic. Yeah, because I know that you're a partner with on the EDA project. You're a partner with BAL. You're very much involved. Amadou was talking about skills acquisition and training, and as a big aspect of it, something that you're very passionate about as well. I wanted you to just come in on that.
Yeah, Amadou is absolutely right. I think the skills aspect of it is really so important, and also building more sustainable businesses, and that can be part of the value chains and the supply chains is really very, very key. And the thing, the opportunity for African entrepreneurs is really to raise the scale of their ambition, to think global, even though they're local, but think global and assert themselves. And the issue of brands that we spoke about earlier on, I think that's an area of opportunity, and lots of potential lies in there for African players and African entrepreneurs to be able to build brands for the global community that are transportable across continents and across geographies. And it's a very, very important area. And we look forward to working with Amadou as well in terms of on the sports front, in terms of what we can do to scale up things and make sure that we position African entrepreneurs and innovators in the mainstream of supplies in that space.
Thank you very much, Kuseni. I want to bring Jazz back in for a second because I mentioned when I was introducing Jazz that he wears many hats, and one of them is in his capacity at ACTIF. That's the African Cotton and Textile Industry Federation, an important partner for the African Union. I know that Ambassador Muchanga works closely with ACTIF as they head towards this African Continental Free Trade Area. And in your role at ACTIV, of course, capacity and skills building, employing best technologies is sort of a central part of your vision for the future, isn't it?
Mark, yeah, absolutely. You see, what we're trying to do in ACTIV is, of course, it's the entire continent, and that's why the name is ACTIV, which means the Africa Cotton and Textile Industries Federation. So we've got members from 27 countries and recruiting more members from parts of the continent who are not our members. But what we're trying to do is very, very simply trying to add value on all that cotton that is being exported out of Africa. Like I said earlier on, Africa grows 1.5 million tons of cotton, which is 7% of the world's cotton, and exports 70% of that cotton in raw form. So zero value capturing in Africa and very little job creation. The whole idea is that if we can not only add value on the continent, create those jobs, and maybe enhance that production. And ACTIV was formed in 2005 primarily because we needed to have a unified voice of Africa. We needed to have Africa speaking on its own. And this was when we were negotiating the African Growth and Opportunity Act with the United States, where we have duty-free market access. And in 2005, I remember I was the inaugural member or founder of ACTIV. We had a South Africa position, we had a Kenya position, we had a Madagascar position, we had a Lesotho position, we had a Mauritius position. And we realized that, divided we stand, united we will stand up. So the option of falling was not there. And so we decided to have that unified voice of Africa. We create a federation which will be the voice of Africa. And we're very happy that we've now come up to a stage where a continental free trade agreement is going to be in place soon. 1st January is not so far away, in the next 6 months. But whilst we're looking at extra business in Africa and outside Africa, the exports that we were doing, well, the huge opportunity lies within, and intra-Africa trade is at 15.9%, is one of the lowest in the world. So how can we grow that? We have a huge market opportunity, 1.2 billion people. And the per capita consumption of textiles, be it low in Africa, it's only 2.5 kilos, as opposed to America, where the average American buys 39 kilos in his wardrobe every year, and Europeans, they buy about 25 kilos. China and India are really catching up. India at the moment is 6 kilos per capita consumption of all textiles, all fibers, and China is at 16. And you fast forward this whole thing into 2025. That's when the expiry of AGOA will also happen. You'll actually see that the Chinese demand is going up. 10 years ago, they were only consuming 6 kilos of textile fibers per annum per capita. And by 2025, the studies that we've got is that will hit 25 kilos. And as soon as that hits 25 kilos and India moves from 6 kilos consumption to 16 kilos, the world of textiles will change forever. Right now, the world's biggest market is Europe and US combined, which is a $550 billion market. And that is Europe and US. India and China are 220 billion at the moment, size of pie. So that size of pie will change forever in 2025. India and China will be the world's biggest market, 740 billion market size. Europe and US will also grow marginally to 725. And that's when we'll see a major metamorphosis in this industry, where who is going to supply India, who's going to supply China. And, it's not a very difficult guess for anybody. India will be supplied by India themselves, and near India, which is Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Myanmar. And China will be supplied by China themselves, and Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam. So who's going to supply Europe and the US? And you know what, clothing and textiles is always going to be there. You're not going to change paradigm and start wearing leaves or skins. It's actually going to grow. So Africa is sitting pretty at the moment. We have this huge opportunity where we have duty-free market access to both Europe and to the US and Africa itself. So I see a whole reorganization of supply chains, and COVID-19 has actually taught everybody that yes, we cannot rely on one country or one factory of the world. We need to create production facilities in other areas. We are already seeing a relocation of industry happening out of China. You saw what Japan was trying to put together, where they said that, we need to get bring onshore our factories rather than offshore our factories. And I see a serious opportunity on the continent. Purely we have the raw material and we have the market, duty-free market access. So now what we have to do is connect the dots between the raw material and finished product, and good to go. We have a very, very big opportunity. Yes, the textile business is probably the worst hit in COVID. The size of the fashion, textile, apparel space was 2.5 trillion. It has shrunk by 35% in 3 months. It has never happened anywhere before. The size has shrunk to 1.5 trillion. And yes, a lot more factories are going to be chasing a lot less business, and we'll see a lot of factory bankruptcies as well. We've just seen JCPenney and G-Straw and Victoria's Secret file for bankruptcy in the US. And it's not yet stopped, because the whole way that the consumer preference has changed. And with COVID, it's only going to get accelerated. Retailing, to me, is going to become an old phenomena. The next new phenomena is going to be e-tailing. You'll be sitting here with your phone or your computer and buying your t-shirt, and you really don't need to go into any mall. So there's a whole transformation going on, and that consumerism and the demand towards consumer preference is going to change.
You're singing the music of Juliet Anama, who's at Jumia, Nigeria. That's exactly what she does. And you're talking about predictions. And so I'm going to ask Juliet, I know you were in your car there on the move. Hopefully we can see you to round us up with the final thoughts. Please dust off your crystal ball. We're talking about innovation and entrepreneurship and the future, and how this is going to help us with the impact of COVID-19, with regional integration, and to reach the Africa we want. Juliet, you have the last word.
Thank you very much. Yes, definitely. I mean, e-tailing is already here. It's been here on the continent for the past 8 years. We're providing a platform for consumers to shop online, browse content online, engage with sellers online. And yes, you're quite right that there's a lot that has happened with COVID. In terms of consumer behavior, prior to now, we used to see consumers used to come online predominantly to buy durable goods. When they wanted to buy phones, they wanted to buy fashion items, when they wanted to buy a fridge or washing machine for a young family, they would come online. But now people are beginning to come online, to come to Jumia platform to buy basic grocery items. When hand sanitizers was important, when soap and washing hands was important, people were coming online because they were looking at it as a source of a contactless means of shopping. So in terms of the words that have become part of my life in the past 6 weeks, contactless is probably the one that tops the list because people want contactless means of shopping. They want contactless deliveries. They want contactless means of payment. And this is what e-commerce does. And it will continue to do in the future. I think if there's anything that made it important and demonstrated the importance of and the relevance, I would say, of the digital ways of working, COVID certainly did that. I think that argument is now put to play. Now your question is, what do I see, from a crystal ball perspective? I wouldn't want to hazard a guess. I'm not a future. I don't want to wear the hat of a clairvoyant, but there's some things that are already emerging. As people engage online, as people realize that quite a number of their day-to-day activities are going to be increasingly happening online, they are beginning to see, we're beginning to see things that people wanting to use video, video shopping, video streaming, live streaming, mixed with the shopping experience, and really giving people a completely different kind of experience with shopping. So people really want to engage in different ways. We're seeing that as well. We're seeing that, before, from an SME perspective, it was only about, some SMEs and MSMEs who had access to technology who could engage online. But we're also seeing, like I said earlier, that the woman in the market in Kigali, the woman in the market who's selling fresh vegetables, she also wants to sell online. And I'm glad that Ahuna is on the call because we started a partnership with UNDP to bring a lot of these local market sellers who were completely cut off during COVID, to bring them online so that they can also participate, have access to markets, transact directly with consumers. So we see that trend going further and further. Before it was just brands and large distributors and retailers who were selling online, but now the average local market woman in Africa also wants to be on e-commerce. She wants to connect to consumers online. She doesn't want to have cash. She doesn't want you to pay her with cash because she's afraid of the person-to-person infection. She also wants to use digital means of payment. So these are some of the things we're seeing. We're also seeing partnerships, more ecosystem type partnerships that are forming. For example, microfinance was also looking at SMEs before. Now we're saying to ourselves, look, we are looking at the marketplace of sellers. You are looking at it from a finance perspective. Are there ways in which we can work together to ensure that we actually enable SMEs from a loan perspective, a credit facilities perspective, we from providing accessibility to markets for them. And we're seeing those kinds of partnerships emerge as a result of what has happened. And people seeing that, look, you can break down those barriers, those silos and barriers were really unnecessary, that there's many ways in which you can leverage data. And then finally, I will make a point on the Continental Free Trade Area itself. Yes, there's a huge opportunity there, and we in e-commerce, we're also well positioned for that. We already provide the digital means of selling. Someone in Uganda, a seller in Uganda on our platform can sell to a consumer in Nigeria or Ghana. We just need to make sure that the right policies are in place and the right things like allowing cross-border payments, allowing digitization of trade documents, ensuring that there are proper customs procedures that allow these things to move freely. And once we have that, we assure that with the transparency of information that e-commerce provides, because we have access to data, you can know the price of the item, you can know what was shipped, you can know whether there was a customs tariff that was associated with it, you can know what VAT was generated. All of that information is available just from the order number of an item that was sold online. So we are well positioned to be able to support in the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Agreement. I think those are the things that I see in the future. Thanks for that, Mark.
Thank you very much, Juliet. You said you didn't have a crystal ball, but then you pulled one out. Thank you very much for that. I think we've come to the end now. I did promise a mystery guest at the end of this, but unfortunately I lost my mystery guest because he went into an inconvenient place where he couldn't contact, but he sends his apologies, and I have a text that he's just sent to me. It is Masai Ujiri, who's the Kenyan-Nigerian professional basketball executive and a former player, and he's the president of the basketball operations of the Toronto Raptors in the NBA. For those who follow basketball, you'll know that the Toronto Raptors are the reigning NBA champions. He says, I'm so sorry I couldn't join today. You all know how I feel about Africa. God bless you all and the great work you do. I will see you guys on the next one. Africa will win. That's from a winner. Africa will win. So ladies and gentlemen, Africa will win. I'll end with that thought. Thank you very much. Some great panelists and some wonderful special guests as well. That concludes, I believe, the final panel of the day, which has been a very spirited day. I'm Mark Edo. It's been a pleasure to host you and moderate this session, and I look forward to many more. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so very much, Mark. And if you just allow me to ask the audience to virtually clap for you. You've done a phenomenal
Yeah, Mark, brilliant job.
done
Well
a
done.
phenomenal job, very tactfully taking us through the session earlier in the day on storytelling and reinventing storytelling on the African continent from the entrepreneurship perspective, and then linking that as well to entrepreneurship innovation and financing it right now. Thank you so much for joining us and for indulging us in 2 panels today. You're very wonderful. And to all of you panelists from wherever you're calling in from in your different time zones, thank you so much for taking and just that time out of your busy schedule to share some powerful insights. I, for one, have learned a great deal over the entire session and all the sessions, by the way, that have gone on throughout the day. So now I would like to ask you to stay, just hold on a few minutes as we play for you a video from Mr. Samba Batili, who was unable, unfortunately, to connect quite well with us, but he did have a video that he made, and it touches on the AFCFTA.
Africa's share to the global creative economy is still very low, at less than 5% compared to other continents. If you take a country like US, where the art contribute more than $763 billion to the US economy, which is more than what agriculture, transportation, or warehousing contribute. My company, ADS, Africa Development Solution, is investing massively in art and culture. In fact, last year, December, we brought together in Mindelo, Cape Verde, more than 170 creative to share their best experience and also to see what opportunities are available. We also built the first ever floating music, dancing, movie, and art studio on the Mindelo Marina in Cape Verde, which will support creative of the continent and the rest of the world. Creative industry is the future. That's why it's very important to invest on this creative and also put in place infrastructure
that will enable their talent. And in the long run, many Africans will be employed and uplift their community. I wish you a very productive Boma.
Well, there we have it. We officially come to the end of the day's sessions and of the main sessions actually of the Afrochampions Boma. It has run for 3 very, very, very exciting days, and you will be able to watch recordings of the sessions for those of you who are unable to watch in the sessions that came before. And so I'd just like to say thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day, of the season. I wish you good health for you and your families, and that we can weather the storm together as we go through so much as Jasbedi mentioned earlier, as you kind of reconfigure many things across the board. So on behalf of the African Union and the Afrochampions team in the background, I just say thank you, asante sana, and yes, have a wonderful time.
Africa, with over 2,000 languages, this massive continent is also renowned as the cradle of civilization. The continent is oozing with cultural diversity, and that the creative arts are the new gold. The African Union and the Afrochampions Initiative are using art with a connection to Africa's heritage, and this is to help transform the modern condition of the continent. Therefore, Boma of Africa launched a prize program to uncover artistic visions and discover talent with a $50,000 grand prize for investments into the winner's new project.
Africa's future is in its past. How will your Africa look like in 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now? Well, Kevin Karithi from Kenya provides a vivid simulation. Beautification and movement in the time of confinement. Cherie Jackson, Senegal, presents us with this beautiful piece. Do our limitations stir our creative juices so that we produce beauty? What do you see? The codes of yesterday. What binds us from moving forward? Is it the codes of yesterday? Vincent Kolo from Nigeria's art poses this enlightening question. The haunting expression on the subject's face speaks volumes. The foresight of an African youth. Do we have the tools to envision a better future? One that will uplift each and every African, making use of our gifts and talents and dreams. Art by Nuruddin, Popola, Nigeria. As we continuously travel to our past to discover our future, will we discover our true selves? Submission by Dawuda Olamelekan Yusuf. Embracing our differences. In a refreshingly intricate collage, Jim Adorno from Ghana illustrates the beauty in diversity and strength in unity. Praise Ojewala, Nigeria, expresses unity despite the difference in ethnicities through the details of his art. Africa's endless magical beauty in 1,000 ways. From the resplendent colors to the authentic African subject in his art, Joseph Mutuku Kenya celebrates unity, culture, beauty, and love. What's your story? Acknowledging and embracing our differences for unity. Alex Niragara from Burundi portrays the richly diverse culture of the Africans in his enthralling patterns, designs, and details. Beautiful unity. Cassandra Tete Ghana uses color, texture, and a whole lot of emotions to paint this masterpiece, displaying different African places. The prize program is helping unearth creative and artistic talent. The partners intend to leverage the talent to enlist corporations and big institutions across Africa into this long neglected and now urgent task of changing the narrative of Africa through creative actions and not just words.
Africa's future is in its past. Indlela ibuza kwa wapambili. That is a Zulu proverb that is translated as, the way forward is to ask those who have gone before.
Nefertiti, my beloved, sweet, sweet, sweet of love, lady of all women, of all grace.
Artists Laureate Program, where top artists are shortlisted through the Creative Arts Prize Program. And of course, through an open call for artists will be announced in July 2020. And these artists will be posted to major corporations and regional institutions to work closely with their marketing and branding departments. The AU and the Afrochampions are aiming at an objective to infuse authentic African artistry into the communications and identities of these prominent African corporate and institutional champions.
Before we started codification, we had some struggles. Some players had some really injuries and changing coaches and everything. But we knew once we figure it out, we'll play and we'll win.
You always remember that you're representing the whole country. Like, you know, it's a lot of pressure coming into the tournament, especially being the home team. We want to make sure we give the fans everything they wanted to see.
The first time they announced the league, everyone was like, I want to be a part of this. Everyone was motivated, extra working hard because we wanted to be part of it.
All the guys are just bonding together. It's never any problems. I mean, we may shout at each other, but it's from a good place. Everything's so smooth and natural here.
Everything we struggled for, now we got the prize. Yeah.
The continent is excited to have something like this take off. There's so many guys in the NBA, African origin, and MVP guys, champion guys. So to bring it here now, we can show some talent on this end.
It's going to put the game to the next level because way back it was like Europe teams on the top, the States, but now Africa is going to be on the map. It's always a pleasure to make my dream come true. Because growing up as a kid, I always wanted to play in the African League.
For the younger players coming to youth, they have something to look forward to, especially here. And we have a team playing in the BAL, so now we must get better to prepare so we can have more players coming up now.
Continues because we want to be in the Final Four at home.
Hey.